What types of cases the Supreme Court of Minnesota hears? Some, it's my understanding, are mandatory. You must hear these types of cases. Others, it's at the court's discretion. Could you describe that process?
Yes, there's essentially 5 ways you can get your case to the Minnesota Supreme Court. And I'll give you just a little bit of background, your viewers just a little bit of background. One of my colleagues on the court talks about the court system in Minnesota as though it were a 3-layer cake. The bottom layer of the cake is the biggest layer. That's the trial courts where you serve. That's where the juries are and where the witnesses come and swear to tell the truth. And we get about 1.5 million cases or so filed into the trial courts every year in Minnesota. The middle layer of the cake is the Court of Appeals. They get about 2,700 every year that are filed in that layer. And the top layer of the cake is the Supreme Court. And we get about 700 cases filed every year. So in terms of the 5 ways your case can get there, most of our cases are cases that we choose to decide. And they come to us on what's called a petition for review from the middle layer of the cake, the Court of Appeals. And they can be any kind of case: civil case, criminal case, divorce case, case involving children, any kind of case. One side or the other is unhappy about the result from the Court of Appeals, and they ask our court to take it. That's the vast majority of our docket. It's discretionary. But we do have some mandatory cases, some case types that we have to hear. First-degree murder is an example. So if you go through the trial court and you have been found guilty of first-degree murder and you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, your appeal comes automatically to our court, and we have to hear it. It's not discretionary with us. Lawyer discipline, judicial discipline. If a client thinks that a lawyer has misbehaved, they file a complaint. Those cases originate with the Minnesota Supreme Court. And often, if we need facts found, we'll appoint someone to find the facts. But we ultimately decide whether the judge or the lawyer misbehaved and what discipline to impose. Another kind of case that falls within our original jurisdiction, which means it starts with us, it doesn't start at some other court, cases involving elections. And sometimes we're drawn into those before the election happens. There may be a dispute about whether someone should be on the ballot or not. And so we are called to make decisions about that process. And then sometimes we're called to make decisions involving the election after the election has happened. So that's a type of case that originates with us. There are also separate court systems in Minnesota for tax disputes. There's a tax court. Appeals in the tax court come automatically to our court. And there's a separate court system for workers who are injured on the job, workers' compensation. And so appeals in those cases come automatically to the Supreme Court.